what we're going to do is I'm going to tone this word. Let me tell you what toning is. Toning is a practice that goes back thousands of years. It's in Aboriginal cultures. It's in Semitic cultures. It's Native American cultures, where they take words that are sacred, that they consider sacred, and they elongate vowel sounds and let the consonants kind of soften. Here's the thing, without going too deep into it right now, because that's what the next subject is, the Aramaic language, and people love to say this kind of stuff about all these different languages, and without actually having studied them. I'm almost 20 years in, really deep in the scholarly studies. And the scholarly part, after a while, I realized was a dead-end street, because it was just screaming about what's on the page, and it had nothing to do with, what's going on internally. But the Aramaic language, every time you make a sound like ah, oo, or ta, it means something in ancient Semitic language. The sound ah means something. The sound oo means something. The sound ta means something. We don't have that in English. Words mean something in English, but the actual component sounds in Aramaic mean something. And if you understand what each of the sounds are in an ancient Aramaic word, then you know its definition, just by using it almost like building blocks. The belief, and I really know this for myself, when you make those sounds, you awaken the essence of what that means within your own consciousness as you're making the sound. So as they're speaking, there's a very conscious stream of vibrations that was coming out of their mouths. Lakota is like that. Mayan Yucatec is like that. Sanskrit is like that. English is not like that. English is a hodgepodge of all these different languages. We don't know the source of Aramaic. A little bit of Coptic in there, a little bit of Canaanite, a little bit of Akkadian, tiny bit of cross-pollination from Hebrew, but other than that, we don't know where it came from. We have no geographic source or time for when it popped up. So the sound that I'm going to make is, it's that first word, which it's going to sound like this, Awoon, A-W-O-O-N, okay? The way it's actually spoken in Aramaic is Abwoon, which is like blowing a kiss with a B there, the B-W sound, Abwoon. But the way that we're going to tone it is simply Awoon or Aoon. Ah, as in say, ah. I'll tell you what these sounds mean after we do the toning. And the second sound is going to be O-O-N, Aoon. Oon. Kind of like put your tongue up on the roof of your mouth. So the sound we're going to make completely is Aoon. Okay, do it one time, see how that sounds. Let it flow right into the oon. As feminine as you can, as open as flowing, okay? Not aoon, but aoon. It sounds very much like om, very much, from Sanskrit. And it has basically the same meaning, which we'll talk about. So I'm going to tone once, and then what I'm going to do is have you all do it with me 3 times, okay? Let go of any kind of stage fright you have. It doesn't have to sound like Manhattan Transfer or like the Andrews Sisters or Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or I don't know which area you're from. Keep going with some different ones. The Marx Brothers. But it could sound like the Marx Brothers, actually. It's more normal. Let go of any self-consciousness you have about the sound. And here's the key. The key on toning is this above all others. The sound that's coming at her mouth is almost completely unimportant. It's just a result. It's a result of a singular process. What matters is where you're bringing it from in your consciousness, okay? That you're bringing it consciously from the deepest place you can access. And I don't just mean that spiritually, I mean that physically. The denial of the physical body is probably one of the worst foibles that's happened in the last 100 years. There is no division. It's all one singular unit. And if you can just be very conscious of where you're bringing it from in your being, a very deep place, the sound takes care of itself. If you focus on the sound, you start to judge the sound, and it starts to wobble and waver. Sounds like life, doesn't it? You're trying to grab on, and you're trying to comprehend, and you're trying to get a hold of things. But when you can just be open and let that flow happen naturally, which is what I'm going to talk about today, it takes care of itself, okay? There's no words for cause and effect in Aramaic, in ancient Aramaic. There's only cause, which is effect, because they're not two separate things. It's one singular process, okay? So I'll tone once, and then you'll do it with me 3 times. Oh. the tongue on the roof of the mouth at the end, okay? 3 times. One more. I want everything you've got into this power, clarity, focus, and intent. Really let this one ring out. This one's for the shift. This one's for the turning of the ages. Just be open, aware of your breath. Be aware of your breath. Wound vashmeya nitkarashmach. Tete malkutach. Nehwe tsivianakekana. Vashmeya abba arha. Hablen lochma de sun kanan yomana. Los woklan hobain wach dahain. I kanadop chanan shwoken lachayabain. Ula tuchlan letnesione. Nilapatsan min bisho. Metul de lakhi malkuthik wahil watishpurta. Lalam. Alamin. Let's say the sound Amen all together. Let's tone that one, okay? Same pitch. Amen. Okay, you can open your eyes. How's everybody feeling right now? I didn't even tell you really what the word meant beyond that it's the first word yet. That's what I mean about, and you could do this with English words, and I do that in my toning circles. We'll experiment with a word like love that just doesn't feel all that amazing. Interesting, you notice that I didn't say amen, I said amen. Men is a sound that's not in ancient Aramaic. Okay, Amen is actually a Coptic word that Aramaic borrowed. It's also in Hebrew. Main. Just tone, just as an example, try men. See how that feels. How's that feel? Men. It feels really lazy, doesn't it? Men is a lazy sound. I can say that. Well, no, we're kind of half and half. I better be careful. But men is a lazy sound in terms of toning. Now, if you say Main is interesting too because it's not completely wide open. It's slightly controlled. Now, the interesting thing about Amen is, without going too deep into the meaning of it, we don't have time today in particular, but Amen is that word whenever Yeshua would say, verily, verily, I say to you. Yeshua, Jesus, Jesus, the Greek, hail Zeus. Where's where that name came from? Okay. But Yeshua would say, verily, verily, I say to you. He never said verily. He never said verily in his life. How many people say, verily, verily? You've got to go see Lincoln. You know, you got to go see Lincoln. It's at the Flat Rock Theater right now. You know, I don't know anybody that says verily. Assuredly, maybe. Assuredly, I say to you. And he would usually say, amen, amen in those cases. And usually what came after, he didn't say, verily, verily, or verily, I say to you. The word that came after was usually amar, which doesn't just mean say, it means affirm. Big difference. I am absolutely affirming to you. So that's the first word. Now here's the thing. There's something called pardes. Pardes is a way of translating. Let me pause for a second to say this as well. You may think, if you're someone who has a problem with rushing rivers, you might think I'm trying to talk to your head, but I'm not, okay? What I say by this is this. It might come out, some things are going to sound really wide. Just be open, okay? You don't have to understand it. I told you I'll be posting it online so you'll be able to see it in the future, okay? but I'm going to go really deep and I'm going to move kind of quick in a short period of time. That's all I'm saying. Now, Pardes is the 4 levels of translation of Semitic languages. Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod in Hebrew. PRDS in English, the letters. Pardes. Does it possibly sound like something? Pardes. Paradise. It's the acronym that created the word paradise. Paradise comes from understanding the 4 levels of translation and interpretation. And if you look at something in the, not necessarily that you're just understanding each of the 4 levels, so much as when you get to the deepest level, which is the Sod level, which I'll talk about in a second, that unlocks paradise. That's the experiential level. All the hammering and screaming about what's on the page, it just sends you in circles, okay? And this is why I pulled out of the scholarly realm. Now that word abun, it means our Father, okay? Simple. The ah sound right here means everything, and the n sound genders it masculine. Masculine meaning physical. Or in the terms of this, you could say dad, parent, papa, abba, abun. Now, if you go down and you do a little bit of research, that's the Peshat level, which is the obvious level, okay? The allegoric or the hint level, which is remez in Hebrew. Remez is the hints or the allegoric. If you do research on that word abun or abba or abi, there's different forms of that in Aramaic, and you look into it in first century Aramaic Semitic cultures, it didn't mean just our father. A little girl could call her father Abba, okay? A boy could call his mother Abba. The mother could call the daughter Abba. The daughter could call her best friend Abba. It meant my beloved, okay? So let's get our lock out of the simply male daddy realm for once and for all. If you want to know what, and this is the truth. There's different mystical ways we can explain why it was translated as our Father, but you want to know why it was translated as our Father? Because men translated it. Even with decades of research, you come back down to guys translated it, and it was a power thing. Okay, and there's mystical reasons you could talk about, but that's basically what it boils down to. So we go from our Father to my beloved. You go down a little bit deeper. This is the drash level. Drash is what's called the midrash level. Midrash is where you lay the same word down and you look at all the different places where it pops up in use, and you get the definition for each time, and you find the common thread that runs through them. Okay? I think our Father and my beloved, we can see the thread. Okay? On that 3rd level, the drash level, it's actually closer to namaste in Sanskrit, which means... If I'm looking at Charlie, because if anybody's going to answer that one.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, sure.
The Spirit of God in me, behold the Spirit of God in me.
Exactly. I recognize essentially that we come from one common source. My source is your source. My center is your center. And I recognize, honor, bow to that, salute. Now, that's not that is where I would say most metaphysical teachings exist, is on the 3rd level. They will get like right here, just to the edge, and never quite go over the edge. They might occasionally dip down in, but they're not there for very long, okay? Now, the deep level is the Sod level. Sod means secret. Secret does not mean that you're not allowed to see it or that it was necessarily kept from your view. It means that it's right here in front of your face and you don't see it. Little things. Cain kills Abel, gets banished from the family, and goes to start a new family. With who? Sod. Jesus is only begotten, immaculate conception. And what does Matthew start with? It starts with his lineage. And it goes from David, and it ends with Yeshua. Who's right before Yeshua? Joseph, his stepfather. That's not his lineage. Hello, secret, right in front of you, okay? And there's bazillions of them like that, pretty cool ones. Now, Sod is that layer that's unlocked through revelation. Revelation doesn't mean, ooh, and foreseeing the future. That word's Gilyana in Aramaic, which means unveiling. It's the moment when you're looking at something and you've seen it over and over and over again, and all of a sudden it unlocks. And you really see into its true nature. And that's when the whole house of cards basically collapses. And you're not trying to hold the card house together. You're just letting it fall. Now, that deep level of translation in Aramaic especially is the easiest to do by letter translations. A lot of people don't realize, I'll talk about it in a second, but the original Torah, the beginning, the 5 books of Moses, especially Genesis, was originally just a string of characters. It was not words, it was not verses, it was not anything but just a string of characters like a mathematical equation. And they didn't break it into words. It was meant to be read letter by letter and holistically. And the gist was that the entire Torah was embedded in the first letter of the Torah. Bait. Okay. And if you didn't get it in that, it was in the first word. If you didn't get it in the first word, it was unfolded fractally in the first verse. If you didn't get it within the first verse, it was in etc., if you understand what I'm saying. Now, each letter in Hebrew and Aramaic, the Hebrew letters, their actual ancient Hebrew letters have mystical shapes. They say they came from the flame. Modern Hebrew doesn't have that, and these Aramaic letters do not have that, but the sounds are the same, okay? Now, the first sound of Abwun is the Aleph, which is the first letter of the alphabet. Greek, alpha, bet. Alpha, bet. That's where the word alphabet comes from. That word in Aramaic means master or all. It means everything contained within one singular whole. Okay? Is everybody breathing? Like I'm trying to understand, but you might, okay? There's worse things than understanding. So right there, that means everything contained within, I'm going in this direction, obviously, and there's no deep mystical reason why it was in that direction. It's because they were stonemasons, and that's the only way a right-handed guy could see the letters he's working on, because if he went in that direction, his hand would cover it. That's it. I've read so many interesting, deep, New Agey sort of theories about that, but that's actually the truth of that. Let the air out of the balloon. Everything contained within one singular whole. Everything is part of one single process. The word for God in Aramaic that Jesus used, Yeshua, is Allah, which means absolute only being. The key word being only. Only. There is nothing outside of God. The external God did not exist in his teachings. It may have existed for the people listening to him, which is why, lost in translation, 2,000 years, you tell a kid to pass the secret, you see what happens. Everything contained within one singular whole. The second letter of the alphabet is also the second letter of the word, which is bait or bet. Now, bait means house, but it doesn't mean house, like probably not best to knock on that. Okay, wood. It doesn't necessarily mean house as in the frame, okay? What it means is housing. It means that something has an appearance of an inside and an outside. Duality. Everything contained within one singular whole, but has an appearance of light and dark, positive and negative, masculine and feminine, inside and outside, here and there, awake and asleep, conscious and unconscious. Are you getting what I'm saying? Everybody breathing? The third letter is waw, similar to the vav in Hebrew. Vav in Hebrew means pin or, goosebumps, multiply, replication, something like a fractal expanding and opening, okay? And the n sound in Aramaic means connect or completion. Everything contained within one singular whole that has an appearance of duality, light and dark, positive and negative, here and there, masculine and feminine, that replicates to form all physical matter. All physical matter is a replication within duality of the one single being, and that entire being is within itself. That's just one word. Yeshua didn't say, pray these words. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. First of all, he didn't say any of those words because there was no such thing as English. That rattled my brain 20 years ago. I'm like, Aramaic? Arabic? No, Aramaic. People call it, they're like, Dale, he's the aromatic guy. And I'm like, that means I smell good. I do wear a lot of oils. So, what we're actually talking about here is, you like that slide? It's a good slide, isn't it? There's a quote, and this is 17th century Christian poet Henry Vaughan. There is, some say, in God, a deep but dazzling darkness. There's a quote that I just posted on YouTube like a week ago. It was something that woke me up a few months back, and it demanded to be written, and I wrote it down, and the next morning it didn't look like a doctor's prescription. I could actually read it, which is usually, it's like, and it said, light is not the absence of dark. It is the inclusion of darkness, which, when fully known, is light. There's one single being, yes? This here is a laser pen, just like this one. but there's a prism on the end of it, okay? You're not just going to see one. There's one laser in it, but look what it does. You see that? There's still one light, but that one light is fractally expanded. And it looks like chaos, doesn't it? And guess what happens if you can see it for what it actually is? Keep watching. Whoa. It looks like chaos, but is it? There's something that Wayne Dyer had said like 20 years ago. I think it was in The Awakened Life, a great tape set that he had on Nightingale Conant. And he said, you can go to Wall Street, and I spent a lot of time in New York City. You can go to Wall Street at 9 a.m. or 5 p.m., and you see all these people, just ants coming out of the subway system at 9. Actually, it's a little bit before 9, or maybe a little after, depending on how seriously they take their job. And then 5 o'clock, they all go back in, and it looks like absolute chaos. But every single well, I would say most people know exactly where they're going, or at least they have some kind of an intention, okay? So there's actually order in that chaos. Now, the beginning, I'm going to start pulling some things together here, and I'm going to start moving a little quickly. This is the beginning of the Gospel of John, okay? What does it say in the beginning of the Gospel of John? What does that say? It's right there, actually. That's right here. What is it? Okay, never mind. In the beginning was the Word. Now, without going too deep into it for time's sake, in my toning circles, I go deeper into what that means. The word word is milta. Ta genders it feminine, okay? My perception of, as an example, let me use this. It's the easiest way to explain it. My perception of this Bible is feminine, okay? I can't show you my perception. You can say I'm having an experience of it. You could say that I'm having a spiritual experience of the Bible, but the book itself is masculine. It's obvious. Manifest. Manifest is a Latin word that means obvious. Something that, much like a hand, is right here in front of your face and you can't miss it. In the beginning was the milta. Ta genders it feminine. Right here, that word milta, well, there's Bereshit, etoi, hua, milta. Those two letters there gender it feminine. My perception of the words on this 1,000-plus-year-old text, my perception of the words on the page is feminine. The actual written words themselves are masculine, okay? It can't be a word on a page. In the beginning was never the written word on the page. It was the speaking of a word or the observation of the word. It's the consciousness that observes. Speaking, as I'm speaking, for me, that's feminine. The sound you're hearing is masculine. Your perception is feminine. Sounds complex, but it's not. It's as simple as it can get. Okay? This isn't anti-intuitive. This is anti-conditioning. Okay? Now, the beginning of that, the Gospel of John, I've got my little thingies here so I can see what my slides are. The beginning of the Gospel of John, that word is Bereshit, or Bereshit. This word right here, it's the same word that's at the beginning of, guess what? Genesis. The first letter is Beit, or Bet, which means house, which means something has an appearance of an inside and an outside. And Reshit, without going into each of the letters for sake of time, means to cast the net outward. If I'm a fisherman and I've got a net that's contracted and I go, and it goes like a fractal and starts opening up, that's Reshit in Hebrew or in Aramaic. Before the net was cast outward, before the fractal expanded, before the beginning of everything. Not even in the beginning, technically. Now, I want to read you something just quickly. This is a letter-by-letter translation of not John, but the beginning of Genesis. Letters, not words, okay? This is from Stan Tenen. Tell me if you notice anything. Is everybody breathing? Breaking open, inside, outside, rushing, radiating, reaching. All life, shining source light in inner being, itself recurring within itself. Breaking open, inside, outside, rushing, radiating, reaching, all life blooming, kindling, inside lighting, looking open, within, without, in inner being, golden, flowing, moving outward within itself. All life, itself recurring within itself. Looking open, in, without, shining source life. Inside dividing, in inner being, golden flowing, moving outward within itself. Doing, living, co-evolving, all life itself recurring within itself. You noticing anything? Looking open. Hello, McFly. Looking open, in, without. That part's not in there. I added that. Looking open, in, without, all life rushing, radiating, reaching, treetops, upright, bearing wholeness, carrying light. Ooh. That's just the beginning of Genesis letter by letter. The first line, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, can be translated over 350 plus ways from Hebrew into Greek or Aramaic. What we have from the King James Bible came from the Septuagint, which was a translation into Greek before Jesus was even born. Okay? He wasn't coming from that. He was learning from the original Hebrew Torah because he was Jewish. And because he was looking at it in Hebrew. And because he was hearing it in Hebrew, not Greek. Okay?